are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices, oh, night divine, oh, night, when Christ was born, oh, night divine, oh, night, oh, night divine. Truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love, and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in grateful chorus raise we, let all within us praise his holy name. Christ is the Lord. Praise his name forever. His power and glory evermore proclaim. His power and glory evermore proclaim. Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices, oh, night divine, oh, night, when Christ was born, oh, night divine, oh, night.
Merry Christmas! Almost. Not quite Christmas yet. Unless you're watching it on Christmas. You might be watching this on Christmas. And Merry Christmas. My name is Chris Haden. I am the pastor at Kindred UMC.
Hey, I'm Courtney. I'm the director of community engagement at Kindred UMC.
You didn't give me space to do my flourish. Let's take it again.
Oh
I'm
God.
Chris Haden. I'm the pastor at Kindred UMC.
Hi, I'm Courtney.
You're stepping all over my legs.
Yep, that's what I'm doing.
You're stepping
on purpose.
all over. Why won't you let me be me?
She's getting her steps in today. You have to let her get them.
I'm Chris Haden, pastor at Kindred UMC.
Hi, I'm Courtney Young. I'm the director of community
You can talk regular now.
engagement at
Just give a little
Kindred
beat.
UMC.
And I'm Preston, and I'm on less than an hour of sleep.
Really?
What?
That explains the shirt.
You're not going to get
Why
any
you would
sleep
make such
tonight
a-
either. Why would you do that?
Why would you make such a ridiculous shirt choice?
Welcome to the aura of savagery, and that's what it is. And if I catch up on sleep, I go, "What are you, not a man?" And things don't turn out well. But today at work was real fun, and driving also fun.
Be safe.
And
Make
tomorrow
your
you're going to
choices.
be on a plane and then a 2-hour car ride.
I actually like getting on a plane tired.
Yeah.
Because I get on a plane tired, and then I can sleep through the plane.
I can't
'cause
sleep on a plane, period.
If I'm tired, I can.
I'm too nosy. I like seeing what we're over.
I will be able to sleep on the overnight flight home because that's at like midnight, so like that's like bedtime. But if it's like a regular daytime flight, it ain't it for me.
Yeah.
It's not happening. Anyway,
If we lived in a different state, I would recommend all kinds of substances that could help.
yeah, well,
But we don't. So you're just going to have to
unfortunate.
suffer.
Yep.
it's fine. I downloaded a fresh episode of The Bachelor to watch. So.
Oh, good. So here we are in our final Advent, although we are going to have one more after this that's Epiphany. It's not really the season of Advent, but it really ties right in with the Christmas story. So it'll be like after Christmas. But this is the last technical Sunday for Advent, which is Advent means arrival. I did a little video on it. Check it out on
That
on this
releases
channel.
tomorrow.
I saw that. I'm like, is this our?
Or it's getting
It was like
well,
3.5 minutes.
It's getting posted about tomorrow.
It will be released by the time this is released. Hopefully you will have seen it. Advent means arrival, and that's why we call this season Advent. It's about the coming of the Christ child, the arrival of the Christ child. And then technically in churches, the 12 days after Christmas are the 12 days of Christmas, as we've talked about, 5 golden rings. So we talked last week about Mary. Before we dive into the shepherds and the birth of Christ tonight, is there anything from last week that needs addressing?
I don't have anything, but I almost never have anything that needs dressing from previous weeks. So if you have something, great.
I had something crazy about Mary, but I'm gonna have to get back to it once we keep going. I think it's further in the narrative.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I remember it on the way here, like, oh, this is gonna be a big point. So if we hit it, we hit it. If not, hopefully I remember it.
Well, I'm not talking much about Mary tonight at all. But,
Okay.
we are going to talk about shepherds and angels. And let's get into it. Let's do
that
it.
Sounds like a great idea.
Away we go.
I'm on board with that.
I'm going to be reading from the Gospel of Luke chapter 2.
I'm sorry, I have to comment on this. What is this bookmark?
It's literally
Because I see it every week.
tore off Amazon. It's trash, but it's not trash. It's useful.
It's a bubble wrap package.
Yeah.
Rip.
It like anything will do as a bookmark. I mean, you can see I use all kinds of crap as bookmarks and place markers and I keep notes and stuff. And
He lives under the 417
I've been using
bridge.
this. I've been using this Bible since I was in college, and it's held up very well. I have many HarperCollins study Bibles, but this one there. I feel like Full Metal Jacket. There are many Bibles, but this one is mine. Like, this is my Bible. There are many like it, but this one is mine. This is my go-to.
It's noted by that 90s.
This is my
duct
EDC
tape.
Bible.
I was just very
my
curious
everyday
as to
carry
what that
Bible.
bookmark was. Anyway, you can continue.
Okay, Luke chapter 2, verse 8 through whenever I stop reading, it'll be in the description below. You're welcome to follow along. I'm reading from the NRSV, New Revised Standard Version, which every good Methodist reads from.
No, I read from the ESV.
Well, I said every good Methodist.
That's fair.
I read from the Deep Sea Scrolls.
I used to read from the Message, and Matt
Wait,
would give me
Deep Sea
shit
Scrolls?
for it.
Oh crap. The
Deep Sea Scrolls. Yeah, you know, the Deep Sea Scrolls.
I used to exclusively read the
They were
Message.
excavated a few years ago with a Sub-Zero marine ship.
They found them in the deep sea.
And by the
It's
Mariana
the Dead
Trench.
Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
They found them in caves, not in the sea. Okay, here we go. Starting at verse 8. Goes like this. In that region, there were shepherds living in the field. Hello, Jonah. Can I help you? We didn't put his bed over here. I think people are going to be upset. My love, can you help? I think our fans of Jonah are going to be really upset that his bed's not here. I get mail about it all the time.
Really?
No.
Oh.
Nobody cares. Nobody's paying attention to anything we do.
That was a great... I was genuinely curious. I'm like, why are you getting mail?
My mom texts me all the time about Jonah.
Where-
She literally does watch and rather than going like, wow, insightful point, she texts me, I can see Jonah. Okay, here we go. Let's start again. Let's try this again. Chapter 2, verses 8. Do you like my Christmas pants? I'm just kidding. Let's go.
You have a lot of words on your ass, is all I'm going to say.
Oh
true.
my God!
What?
It's true.
Just,
Both
not
of
saying
you.
that the ass is in the Bible.
Both of you and your
Ass
asses.
is in the Bible.
We sang,
Ass is in Christmas songs.
I know, they say, they sang ass last night in a Christmas
You just
mass, in a
wait
Catholic
for
mass.
all the Bachelor talk that's coming your way when you're trapped next to me for 3 hours tomorrow.
Do you know
Keep
what
it up.
Beats by Dre headphones are? Like noise canceling?
You know what? I can take the headphone
There's
and go
a specific,
boing.
there's a brand of, or a line of Beats headphones that's Courtney canceling.
Right.
I'm just gonna bang it against your ear for the full 3 hours. Anyway, let's get on with it.
Okay, let's get on with it. Luke chapter 2, verse 8. In that region there were shepherds living in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. Pay attention to the word living. That's going to matter.
Okay, living.
Living in the fields. Then an angel of Yahweh stood before them, and the glory of Yahweh shone around them, and they were terrified. As we have discussed, angels are the nuclear option. They always, up to this point, have brought tidings of destruction, hellfire, brimstone. We're going to destroy your whole city and all of your people because you're shitty people that God doesn't want anymore. That's what angels have been. So they're terrified, which makes total sense. Verse 10, but the angel said to them, do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all the people. To you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign for you. You will find a child wrapped in bands of cloth and lying in a manger or a feeding trough. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts, praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace among those whom he favors. We're going to get into that, whom he favors. Well, let's go ahead and talk about it now because it's actually not very complicated. So the way that they didn't find a book of Luke. They found multiple copies that are like pieces of text. And then they kind of put them all together and that's how we get the whole of the scripture of Luke. There's a debate because actually this part right here, those whom he favors, there's two different versions of all the texts of Luke that they've found. One of them says those whom God favors, and others say for all people. And nobody knows which one's first. Nobody knows which one Luke actually wrote because we just have copies, basically. I'm going to, from now on, presume that it's for all people because that's in keeping with not only this particular story, but the whole of Luke's gospel also. I'm pretty sure, just based on the consistency of the message, that Luke wrote for all people, not just whom God favors.
Well, I was going to say on a smaller scale, the rhetoric of the angel speaking says, this is for all the people.
Yeah.
Good news for all the
Yeah.
people.
And then he
That's true.
says, only for whom his favor rests. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So why are you telling everybody
Yeah.
this?
So I don't have any evidence other than that, like
Yeah.
the consistency of the message. It seems to me though that Luke is emphasizing the all people, and we're going to talk about that after we're done reading. Okay, so 14. I'm repeating 14. Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace among all people. 15. When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let us go now to Bethlehem and see this thing that has taken place, which Yahweh has made known to us." So they went with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the child lying in the manger. When they saw this, they made known what had been told them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds told them. But Mary treasured all these words and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen, as it had been told them. So, as always, historical context is going to reshape the way we understand this story. Historical context that has mostly been ignored or lost or whatever. But it's actually not lost, because the only reason I know is because I read smarter people who I've read the books that they wrote, and it's like, no, actually, this is what this is really about. So, first of all, the first thing I said to pay attention to was the living in the fields. Mm-hmm. These are shepherds who live in the fields. These are not shepherds who go to the fields and tend their flocks. These are shepherds who live in the fields. Historical theory, one historical theory is that shepherds who lived in the fields were sent there because they were not accepted in town. And so the way this theory goes, and I'm going to lean into it, again, it's not proven, but this seems to add a slant to the gospel that makes sense to me. The shepherds who lived in the fields were people who had somehow broken society's rules. And there's a lot of theory around, they may have been like sex offenders. They may have been like pedophiles and rapists and criminals. And the reason that they were sent to tend the flocks in the field and live there is because, there's not a lot of running water. And when it gets cold in the desert at night, in this type of society, it's not like central heating or anything. The way you keep warm is you like sleep with the animals and you share body heat. So you might be able to trim your beard, you might be able to find new clothes, but you definitely cannot get rid of the stink of sheep if you don't have running water. Anytime the shepherds who lived in the fields would come to town, even if like they were ostracized, like even if they tried to hide themselves, you can't hide the stink. So it was like a mark. It was like the scarlet A. It was the scarlet letter on their chest. It was you are not welcome. You have betrayed our most fundamental. Do not go near him, and don't let your kids go near him. These people are the wretches of society. They are the worst. Not only they stink, but their stink means that they're criminals and perverts and...
They have social stink.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different levels of stink.
Yeah, it's much different than like, oh, shepherds.
Right.
And also, it's important to have that in your head whenever, if you read further in the Gospels, when Jesus uses shepherds as analogies all the time. Just like he uses Samaritans, tax collectors, Roman soldiers, like all the people who aren't in on the inn, adulteresses, like he uses all the people who aren't in on the inn as examples and teachings, and shepherds are one of them. Shepherds are like kind of shitty, smelly, bad, pervert people. Like at least that's what society believed at the time. So there's lots of reasons to bring that up, but now let's go through what happens next in the story. It says, there are shepherds living in the flocks. And then what happens to them?
A host of the heavenly, or a group of the heavenly host comes
the
down.
Well, just one
angels
angel at
come.
first.
Well,
Yeah.
The angel comes.
But yeah.
It's a UFO.
And when an angel, so like imagine this, a shepherd who's probably done something to be kicked out of society, and a group of them. And all of a sudden, the nuclear option, the wrath of God shows up in front of you. And you can imagine it puts a slightly different feel on they were terrified. It's not just that they were scared, it's that they were like, oh God, I'm finally getting my comeuppance. You know, like it's finally caught up with me. Terrified because the wrath of God has found me at last, and I'm about to be destroyed and like punished for all eternity. Like it's serious shit. And then the angel says to them,
All people.
well, but first says, do not be afraid.
Well, yeah.
Like, do not be afraid. So, like, that element of the shepherd's deserving wrath, being visited by an angel, experiencing terror, well-deserved, earned terror, and then the angel says, don't be afraid. I bring good news. Like that, and like this is a core message of the gospel. Those who have been separated from God and are terrified and can't find their way back to God no matter what they do, God comes to them and says, don't be afraid, you are not my enemy, you are my beloved. Like this is the core message of Christmas. So, let's stop there before we move on. Thoughts, questions, comments, concerns? What does that make you think of?
It's grotesque.
Grotesque.
It's putting like a more grotesque spin on a childish story. That's
The pervert angle.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're shepherds. They wear a little hood and they have a cane.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that.
They're part of the nativity scene.
Yeah. They're part of the nativity
I
scene.
literally have a nativity scene in my house.
Yeah.
Well, there's pedophiles on there.
Well,
Yeah, great.
we'll get to that because
yeah.
you're hinting at, and they show up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure. So it was kind of a funny point that they were terrified, which I guess I imagine they were because of the whole wrath thing. But on another like ironic note, it could be okay, I understand. So of like an accepted terror, like oh okay, duh,
it's finally caught up.
Okay, good to go. And then they're like, no, we're good here.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like an off guard. So I wonder if that would add into like a more of like an agreeable following of shepherds.
What do
of
you
like,
mean?
I mean, we're all down and out. We've kind of lost our way. Blah 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 blah. You might as well take me out. And as they're like ready to have their wrist cut or be blown up, they go, this isn't how it's going to work.
Right.
And then they go, what? And
well, it's the epitome of forgiveness.
Yeah.
It's the, like, imagine if think about like debt, like people who have like severe credit card debt or student debt or whatever, and it's kind of like
wasn't that a parable?
It's this like what?
Isn't that the debtor parable of like, master, I have this debt and I'm so sorry I can't pay it back, and he goes, you're good. But then turns it the other way on someone else.
And then and
the master, it's retribution too. But the whole point of
I think it's more about the grace you receive,
which you're not expecting.
But this is at the front end. Like so imagine like having this what do they call it? Somebody's hammer.
Thor's hammer?
No,
the judge's gavel.
It's a Greek name.
Yeah, I don't
anyway,
know.
whatever.
I got nothing.
I'm so close to it. It's on the tip of my brain.
The blacksmith?
The hammer of destruction that's hanging over, and that's the myth. That's the Greek myth, and it's this idea that it could just drop at any minute and just destroy us.
Whose hammer?
And that's kind of like the idea of like debt in almost any form, especially consumer debt or student debt. Like a mortgage is different. A car loan is different because you have an asset.
Right.
Like there's a thing there. But like student debt is like,
it's not a physical.
I already
asset,
paid it. It's not like I can sell my degree
Yeah.
to something, and then like credit card debt. It's not like I can return everything I bought and just pay it off. Like it doesn't work
there's
that
still
way.
interest. Yeah.
So you just have this thing hanging over you. And imagine if the debt holder, the bank or the government or whatever, just came to you and was like, you know what? It's all good. And all of a sudden you're just free. Like that's the sentiment of what's happened here.
But I think you touched on it very lightly but it was a heavy point of that's what grace is.
Yeah.
It's this, there's no way I deserve this, so I'm ready to die right now.
Yeah, it's literally, the definition
Yeah.
is undeserved favor.
And it's unfair. And
Right.
guess who
It
doesn't
is
like
unfair.
unfairness?
Yes.
Everybody in this room. So even if it's the other way around and you go, this feels cheap, this feels like I'm taking something that I don't deserve.
Yeah. Well,
Which is the
one of
whole-
the biggest hurdles for people connecting with God or connecting with like a church community, despite, let's put all the church problems aside, but one of the biggest hurdles to get people to connect with a healthy version of that is that it's really hard to just accept that kind of grace.
Right.
It's actually difficult unless we're reading a lot into it, but unless the shepherds react exactly as you described, like I confess, I acknowledge, I'm take me now, I earned this, I'm ready. I'm terrified, but you're right. This is what I deserve. And that, again, that's a microcosm of the gospel message. We think that we will succeed and find meaning and find purpose and find connection by kind of like human effort, working our way out of, denying, disproving, somehow arguing in the court of law that, no, I am a good person. But actually the real way, and this is the gospel message, the real way to wholeness, self-love, ability to receive love from other people and be graciously loving towards other people is actually the opposite. It's the route of, I have responded poorly to things. Even things that I get into trauma and abuse because almost everybody has trauma and abuse in their past. I responded to that trauma and that abuse and that pain by walling up, lying, deceiving, creating a facade, whatever. And like those are understandable coping mechanisms, but let's make no bones about it. They are sin. They are things that are ultimately doing self-harm that God doesn't want for us. They're things that are leading us down a path that's harmful, not a path that's helpful and loving. And so if we can remove the judgment out of the idea of sin and just accept sin, the idea of sin as, though those are things that a loving, healthy God doesn't want for you. Like that's a very different way of looking at sin than I think what we kind of get in the church. The heart of the gospel is to say, you no longer have to be trapped by those mechanisms, by that type of deceit, by that mask that you wear at work where you can't be yourself, by the things that you wish you could tell your partner that you just can't bring yourself to confess or admit because you're afraid of how it'll change the way they look at you. It's all of those, just fill in the blank. We can just run off a million different examples of what sin looks like in a real world life. And sometimes it is literally like I'm angry and I hit people. Sometimes it is as overt as that, but in my experience, most of the time in our culture, it's something along the lines of like, I'm not being honest about this with myself or with the people I love. And that's actually I'm not being honest because I'm afraid it will separate me, but the deceit is actually what's separating me.
And sometimes it's innate, like involuntarily innate, because it was either done.
Sometimes it's like self-conscious.
Right, it was.
Oh yeah, we're not
subconscious.
even aware of most of these things in my experience.
Yeah, because it was either done so young or you've done it so many times that
Right.
it's become habit
Yeah,
to you already.
it's a thing you
it's
did.
a protective behavior.
Right. So that it
Yeah.
protects first and you forget and remember later.
Well,
if you
probably
ever
when
do.
you first did it, we first did it. I'll speak for myself because I think it's more helpful. When I first picked up my coping mechanisms, they were actually survival protective. They were good for me.
Yeah.
I was doing what I had to do to survive an abusive situation, and they were great. The problem is, once you're out of that, we never really kind of go back and unpack them.
Right.
We never received this message of, like, hey, I've come to destroy you. All right, okay. Just kidding. I love you. Like, you're the best and I love you and you're forgiven. And it's time for you to start loving yourself. It's time for you to start to reconcile within your own heart the love that that get rid of the hatred that you've had for yourself and for other, like that's the message of the gospel. It's the like, no. If you surrender to this, what you'll find is not destruction but love. And like that's the angels with the shepherds. If you surrender to this, you'll find not destruction but love and grace and forgiveness and connection. You know,
I think it's beautiful too. It's in these lowly people as well, or these lowly figures. Kind of lonely too. They're like the Abraham figure, the Adam and Eve figure even can be considered lowly.
All of the Bible is constantly picking the worst possible
it's the
hero.
less than, the rejected.
Again, well, we talked about it last week about like how often the Bible uses women in a patriarchal society. There's a chauvinistic man on top society, and God constantly picks women to subvert the power structure in order to prove that no.
Again,
I'm the one who's doing this, guy. Yeah. Like God is saying, I'm the one you should be counting on. And I'll prove it. I'll pick the one that you least expect. You know, and King David is another great example. He's the smallest of his brothers and the least, like strong. And when he goes out to fight the giant Goliath, they try to armor him, and he goes, no. And it creates this image of this giant armored warrior against a shepherd boy who's only depending on his faith in God. And this is the way that God wins that war. Like God's constantly picking weak examples to subvert the power structure and what's going on. And that's what's happening with the shepherds. Of all the people, all right, let's move further in the story. So the angels come, they deliver this message. It's good news for you and for all people, for everyone on the face of the earth. Utterly emphasized by the fact that the message is coming to the sex offenders. There's credibility to when this angel says everyone.
Yeah.
It's everyone. Like even the worst people. And then, and the angel explains there's a child. You'll find the child wrapped in cloth and in a manger. And they say to each other, let's go see. Like, we have to see this because this is an amazing thing that's happened. And then, after giving birth in a strange town with the animals, Mary and Joseph see who shows up first. And it's the sex offenders. The first people to worship at the feet of Jesus are sex offenders. This is and by the way, when they do it, he's in a feeding trough. He's in a pig sty. This is a radically different God than anything anyone ever expected, ever. This is a God who's come to bring the high low and to bring the low high. Like people who lift themselves up, he will bring them down. And people who have been oppressed, he will lift them up. And it's inherent from the very get-go of this story, because the first people that worship at his feet are sex offenders. People who, by their very presence and smell, would be offensive to you. And that's who God invites to the birth. So, very different kind of story than what most people expect. The reason I bring that up is because one of the things that I have observed a lot is how offended everyone is by each other. How absolutely offended everyone is. And I know that offensive language, it leans more towards, that's kind of more left-leaning. Like left-leaning culture seems to latch onto offended. But let's make no bones about it. The other side, they don't use the word offended, but that's exactly what's going on. We're all offended by each other's presence. I just saw family members. I'm a very left-leaning person. I voted Democrat every chance I've gotten in my adult life, and I was reading family posts about how all of the malarkey and garbage that has happened with the election and how the Democrats and Joe Biden stole the election. Despite the fact that every court in the land has absolutely thrown out every fucking lawsuit and declared there's no evidence at all for any of this. I was offended at the just radical, how can you not see like, what are you doing? I have a feeling if I had engaged those family members, they would have felt the exact same way about me.
Yeah, I mean, mine's not necessarily a political example, but I mean, I feel that way about a lot of big box churches. Mm-hmm. And the way their haze machines and the surface
not fog, but haze.
Surface level prosperity gospel-esque bullshit that gets spewed.
I'd be all for
out.
the haze machines if it wasn't followed up by a message that I completely am offended by.
Oh, God.
But I guarantee you, if they looked at what we were doing, it would be, you guys are too rowdy for us. Y'all are too much. Like,
Although I like rowdy. It wouldn't be rowdy. It would be like
you guys are drinking?
Are you even doing...
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? This
Right.
is anti-Christ.
Yeah.
Like, we would literally be offended
And
by
to
each
that,
other.
I'd say fair enough.
Well,
Which is probably what they say about me, maybe. I don't know.
this is touching a lot of veins in my arm that should be like splitting open right now. So like one is this whole grace conversation that we should be having with each other. We are not. And the grace word is always interchanged with either injustice is being held or had, and grace can't be afforded to anyone else because of this injustice, and that's what offense is to people or to some people. Or it's a sign of weakness to the other side of there's no way I relent to you and give you the benefit of the doubt here, or I look weak compared to you. So it's so weird that it's two completely different sides, but they meet in the middle, ironically. Mm-hmm. Because of taking themselves too seriously or taking their causes too seriously, no matter what the cause is. And somewhere...
Well, and that's even... Because I don't have a solid answer for this,
Right.
other than like we need to practice more grace and more empathy with each other. But I've been thinking about this a lot because obviously I've been preparing to talk about this with you guys. So broadly speaking, and this is broadly speaking, generationally, something happened around the baby boomer Gen X transition. Mm-hmm. And if you like survey baby boomers, and this is all Melissa Cooper's stuff. Reverend Melissa Cooper, if you ever see this, shout out to you because she's the one who taught me this stuff, and she's the real expert. If you survey baby boomers and older, they have values that are like maintain the status quo. They want to teach, like they value like conformity, like group conformity, and that sounds kind of bad when I hear it, but it's actually a good thing. What they're saying is, hey, you want to be in this club? Great. Here's how you do it. Here, let us teach you how you need to, and by these lessons of how you can be a part of this club, your life is going to be better. And it's like things like Protestant work ethic. Like that's a very baby boomer and older idea. Like we're going to teach you how to work hard, and that's what it means to be a part of us, you know? And so if you want to come be a part of us, then we're going to teach you how to work hard. And so like they value this like kind of maintain the status quo, maintain group uniformity. Gen X and younger have not just different values, but like opposed values.
I was going to say different and maybe in spite of.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it's adversarial.
Yeah.
It's not just that they're different. It's that if you ask like a millennial about their values, they're going to articulate things like they're motivated and energized by change and the potential
Right.
for change, not the status quo. They're motivated, and when they think about like including people in the group, rather than thinking like the group's going to absorb you and you can be one of us, they actually think, oh, great, bring your uniqueness. Your uniqueness can then change our group dynamic.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's not just different, it's like opposed. It's like, and again, we offend each other. They're not just like
It's a focal shift.
different strokes
Yeah.
for different folks,
It's
you
a
know?
shift, it's a shift of focus, where the first focus was, I wouldn't say necessarily individual health was the focus, but it was come in and join and we will teach you without any strings attached or whatever. You're a part of our group. While now with the adversarial focus of you're in our group, so we have more to go against other groups or whatever groups where.
Well, it's turned into like culture war and conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now we're arming ourselves to fight rather than, and like, neither side is willing to compromise and learn from the other. Because actually, like, I'm a millennial. Almost everyone who's probably listening to this is going to be in the motivated by change, and the uniqueness of the individual is more important than almost everyone is going to be more millennial minded. So let me talk about the opposite. The idea that we have traditions that are important, that have something to teach us. The idea, like, even basic stuff like balancing a checkbook and hard work matters, and like, there are really, like, fiscal conservatism, like, there are really good things about this paradigm that we kind of, and I always say I'm in the business of getting babies out of bathwater. We throw those babies out with the bathwater a lot. Now, I'm talking to us because that's the job of the prophet and the preacher. Certainly, if I was talking to this group of people, and I've been a pastor at a church where it was mostly this group of people, and I gave kind of the opposite message. But to us, I want to say, like, particularly with the holidays, particularly with Christmas, can we compromise? Can we let down our judgment and our I don't know, like, resentment and offendedness? Can we find grace in the midst of this? Can we try and connect? And I understand that sometimes that goes into, that can go unhealthy. That can go into, like, self-abuse and putting yourself in dangerous situations. And I'm not talking about that. I encourage everyone to practice self-love and healthy boundaries. But I think that by and large, we've gone way too far in the other direction. And I'm reading this Christmas story where the first people who worship Jesus are the most offensive possible examples you could think of. They're just, and oh, by the way, spoiler alert, when we talk about Epiphany, the next group of people that really worship Jesus and show up are Muslims. And we'll talk about it because they're, like, the text is pointing at something in there too. But, like, there's something about this God that calls us out of ourselves, that calls us out of our own, like, I don't even know what to call it, but like the echo chamber that is what we have become in this modern era of social media. Like, we only reaffirm our own beliefs. We only accept people who think like us and fit into our particular mold. And the gospel says something completely different. And the Christmas story demands that we don't act that way, demands that we practice love and grace towards people who inherently offend us. And so, like, I don't know, I feel like a desperate plea. Like, I just want to, like, please find a way to show grace and to extend love, you know?
It's a lot of missed points.
I think so.
It's weird. It's like watching the dart just go way past the board sometimes. Like, this is not it, man. Well, we've got to fight against this because this is this and that's that, and I'm in this group. And
also, I say it confessionally because I get worked up about stuff too very easily. Like I'm surprised at how easily I get caught up in that shit.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I've had to, even within our group, I've had to go back several times and be like, hey, I'm sorry, that wasn't the way to handle that. You know, like, I feel like I haven't necessarily changed my mind about the points, but I definitely wish I hadn't come at it that way, you know? And almost every time the person's like, I don't want you to change your mind about the points. I want to be treated well. I want to be treated healthily, you know, with love and grace. And it's like, yeah, you have every right to expect that. Like,
there's like this new take on seriousness, and I don't know where it's coming from. I'm sure I could guess, but this whole like new take on my point is gospel, and you have to follow it, or we're all wrong here. Instead of, you've got point B and I've got point A, and I guess words are words, and that's that.
It's also funny
I think
language.
there's also the opposite like, for me, rather than choosing to engage in those moments, I choose to completely disengage. Like, I'm not interested in debating. I'm not interested in talking politics, because what's the point? Like, I would rather just not. And I don't think that's necessarily healthy either.
I was going to say, sometimes that adds to the problem.
That's my, like, nope, right. I'm not going to get into it. Like,
right, well, that's, and then some people are aggressive and some people are passive and go, I'd rather not. And just let the train kind of keep running into the wall.
I think I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to bring it, like, so I've struggled to connect with my dad for many years. I was recently talking with him about maybe planning like a guided hunting thing, like where he and I, because he was a hunter and he put himself through college by hunting $2 in a doe, and I'm really interested in learning about that, not only for like just the basics of like learning how to do that, but also like to connect with my roots and my family and my, like, this is my kind of my heritage. My half of my family's from Texas, like they were all hunters, you know, and I'm the first in my generation, like me and my cousins are the first generation who never learned any of that, you know? And so I was talking with him about that, and it was actually going really well. And it, not without effort, I had to a couple of times be like, no, Dad, I'm saying this is a strong offer. I'm saying I want to connect with you on this level. And when I said it that way and just wouldn't let it be like unsaid or like subtle, I was just very direct about those things. And then he was like, oh, well, that's like, and he was like moved by that. And then at some point he brought up something when he and I were talking about something. He's like, well, you sound like a conservative. And I kind of stopped and I said, well, Dad, there are plenty of criticisms I could level at the Republican Party and conservatism in general. I'm just avoiding that because I know that it devolves, it hurts our relationship. And he didn't really know what to do. And like he responded fine. He was like, fair. I think in his own way, he went, fair enough. Let's keep having fun. Let's keep talking and connecting. But like, there's something about I was really proud of myself for handling it that way, because it was kind of what you're talking about. For me, it felt like one of the first times where I was able to be like, no, I'm not going to be silent and awkward while you go on about things that I completely disagree with, but I'm also not going to disconnect from you. Mm-hmm. I'm going to stay connected. I'm going to say, no, I'm not willing to go into that place because I'm afraid it's going to disconnect us. And he responded, I was afraid of what his response would be, but his response was like completely normal and reasonable, because he's not an idiot and he's not an unloving guy. He went, oh, okay. And like took the lead, he took the bait, so to speak. He followed my lead into like, no, let's stay here. Let's stay in the, and not to say that we can't ever go into those other places, but there's something about our relationship has been too much of that. And why don't we try and be in the places where we connect? And just because you and I disagree on some basic kind of political things or some basic life philosophy things doesn't mean that we don't love each other and we can't be in a gracious, loving relationship with each other, And I was surprised at how it feels like it's so much harder than it is, but it actually wasn't. It was just a matter of me like swallowing and surrendering to what it is and being like, let's not do that. And he went, let's not do that. Let's stay. This is fun. Let's keep doing this,
Yeah, it's like a straight up grace moment.
Yeah.
Of where's civility here, man? Or like, I'm still here wanting to be here with you type of talk versus, you know what? I'll stand my ground here and just we'll butt heads for 3 hours like we usually do.
Yeah.
It's this. We'll bring it back to the whole trope we've been talking about for like weeks of this whole like changing the culture shock change of like, no more usual suspects, man. We're out of here. Like, go that way. I promise I'll give you more stuff if you get there.
Yeah.
What do you mean it's different? Just go. We're so stuck in our seriousness and our echo chambers, whatever we're talking about.
You said something earlier about like what we say is gospel truth, which was actually a really funny way to put it.
Yeah.
I think you came by it honestly, but it's like, isn't it ironic that it's the gospel that says like the exact opposite of what you say is gospel truth? Like the gospel actually says, don't take yourself too seriously, hold on loosely, surrender to grace. Connection and love is far more important than being right or being pharisaically accurate,
Yeah, I think that drives the nail all the way through.
Like, and so it's ironic that like the use of the word gospel there is antithetical to the gospel.
Yeah, I know. The correct answer is wrong.
Yeah.
That's that's what it is. That's fun.
Well,
Cool.
I feel like we're probably reaching the end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, to reemphasize, I want to encourage everybody out there who's listening, especially if you're hitting this right before you go to like Christmas family dinner kind of stuff. I really encourage you to lean into the grace, focus on ways to connect rather than ways to, not even ways, because it's never on purpose. Like, I don't think anybody goes in.
It's not ever a like conscious thing.
Yeah. But there is a mindfulness about focus on ways to connect and love. Focus on ways to show grace.
Versus separate and hate. Or separate
and almost
fight and
nobody
be bitter.
ever really focuses on separation or hatred, but they almost always end up focusing on being right or correct.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the cross we need to die on. Be willing to not be right or correct for the sake of love and grace and connection. That's my strong encouragement. And I think it comes straight out of the stories of the coming of Christ. Christ is inviting us to humiliate ourselves in order to love and be graceful, and in so doing, receive love and grace and like become whole in that. So, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace this holiday season. Amen.
His law is love, and his gospel is peace. Change